Hey, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the SNL Stats Podcast. Your camera is not broken. Your microphone there's no earwax in it. I am not John, host and creator of the SNL Stats Podcast. I am Sammy Kay. I have previously been on a couple episodes of the show, but today we have a very special episode this week of the podcast. Now that we are still on hiatus, I know fans at home are dying for a new episode of SNL. We still have to wait a little longer, but until then, we have a podcast for you guys tonight. Just to quickly take a look at last week's episode, if you haven't gotten a chance to listen or watch it, John did a fantastic panel, SNL by the numbers, with great guests. From SNL in Review Experience. You can read them at Entertainment Weekly and Vulture, Andy Hugland, and the SNL Stats guru, Mike Murray. They were on the show, did a fantastic breakdown of everything stats-wise and analytics for SNL for this season and previous seasons. If you haven't had a chance to take a listen to that, I highly recommend it. You can find that on YouTube for video version or wherever podcasts are sold, whether it's Apple, Spotify, whatever. So today we have a fantastic show. This is our first ever Superfan Takeover. It's a very special episode, kind of like a 90s sitcom where, you know, they're introducing some serious topics. Now, it's a very special episode in the sense that I am going to be hosting with this fantastic panel. To kind of have you guys get to know us a little better. We all love the show enough to where we, live and breathe the thing. And we think this is a good opportunity for the community to kind of get to know us better. And hopefully, if we're successful tonight, no pressure, we can do more of these in the future. So let's introduce our fantastic panel tonight. He was previously on the Chris Rock episode and Mulaney episode of this very podcast. It is Superfan Bill Kenney. Bill, how you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me back.
No
Good
problem.
to meet y'all.
Yeah, absolutely. How has it been with no SNL on every Saturday? Are you dying for it to come back like the rest of us?
Absolutely, especially with everything going on in the world. It would have been nice to have an episode this week, especially. But we're definitely missing it, but catching up on all the old 80s Peacock episodes. So
there you go. Yeah, that's a good plug. And we, the cast needs a break. They had 6 episodes in a row. It was crazy.
It was.
All right, next. He was previously on the Adele episode of the podcast. We have Andrew Haynes back on the show. Andrew, how you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. Excited to be back. Love talking SNL. So this is like the highlight of my since the last time.
Yeah, no, there you go. I feel the same way whenever I get the opportunity to talk about the show. And then last but not least, we have previously shared the stage together on the Dave Chappelle episode of the podcast. You can also see him moderating the Live from New York subreddit on Reddit. It is Andrew Haskell. Andrew, how's it going?
It's going good. Anytime we get to sit around and talk SNL is a good night.
Yeah, definitely. Like I said up top, this is a Superfan Takeover. So what does that mean? It means the inmates are running the prison. We have put together a fun show for you guys tonight. We have a couple games we'll do later on the show and a couple of fun topics. I assigned our panelists a little bit of homework over the week just to get ready and to have a nice, fun discussion for the show this week. The first thing that we want to talk about, I tasked the guys on the panel to create what I call SNL Top 5. Now, what is that? It doesn't necessarily mean top 5 favorite cast members or top 5 favorite hosts. I mean, it could be. I have no idea what they're about to say. But I said, make a top 5 of whatever you want relating to the show. So let's start with Bill. No pressure, but do you want to share the top 5 that you kind of put together. We can kind of go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, or we can do 5s all around. How do you want to do it?
Ooh. So is everybody else going to join in to my top 5? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna probably break it down. Maybe we'll get a little feisty. Say, hey, this should have made it on. So, let's just just start at number 5 and work your way down, and we'll chime in where we can. But let's hear it.
Okay. Well, I did the top 5 commercial parodies. So this was a lot of fun, but very difficult to pare down to under 50. So, but in my 5th slot for that, I had Dissing Your Dog with Dale Sturdivant. The Will Ferrell commercial where he just absolutely lambastes these poor dogs, and it doesn't get any more Will Ferrell than that. And I think that was just perfect execution by Will.
Yeah, absolutely. Haynes, I just saw you have a good chuckle about that one. Do you want to speak a little bit to that pick?
Well, I really got into SNL, in the heyday of Will Ferrell. We always talk about how people's high school cast is kind of the one that maybe makes the biggest impression on them, or it's kind of like their first love. And it's just essential Will Ferrell screaming at innocent beings, the get off the shed, was his beginning to all this. And he's just always played that role so well, of this guy who's taking things way too seriously.
Definitely. And there's a reason why Will Ferrell has 3 best ofs. I think he's the only one that had 3 best ofs, because I'm pretty sure one volume is just him screaming in every sketch. Haskell, do you have anything to add on that one, or should we keep going?
I think it just speaks to how talented Will Ferrell is. Nobody else will get away with screaming at dogs, and people laugh at it. You know what I mean? The dogs are untouchable, yet Will Ferrell makes it funny. So you got to give him absolute credit on that one.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Bill, let's throw us another one.
Number 4, I'm going way back to Swill with Bill Murray. It was one of the first where they were parodying an actual commercial. This was based on Heinz ketchup and beer commercials in the late 70s, and just the way he poured that out. And here comes all the Lake Erie garbage and bottle caps, and to Carly Simon's Anticipation. It was just perfect.
Yeah, definitely. All right. Any of you, Haskell or Haynes, have anything you want to add to that one?
Well, I'll ask Bill now. Do you prefer, if you had to pick, as long as we're talking about commercials, do you like the ones that are true parodies of real commercials that already exist, or do you prefer the ones that are completely created just for the show, just completely gag, idiotic stuff?
That's a great question. I think the true parodies, especially now watching the 80s SNLs all over again for the 100th time, seeing those, having to look up a couple of them to go, oh, that's right, that was a Michelob Light commercial, or oh, that's
sure.
So I think when they nail it, it's so great. And I mean, it's better now because obviously they've gotten more high tech, but they use the actual names. When they did the Piscopo and Robin Williams beating each other up, they used Budweiser, but with 2 Ds. It didn't really make sense. Who are you fooling here? So, but I think the parodies of the actual commercials are the best, in my opinion.
I think I agree.
I would agree with that one too, just because I think nowadays, you said, they're a little bit better now. Commercials just try so hard nowadays. There's so much almost forced humor that it can be like shooting fish in a barrel with some of these.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah. Do you guys think that they're kind of a little overproduced, Bill or Haynes? Do you think they should maybe go back to basics a little bit more with the commercial parodies, or is it just kind of sign of the times? They're going to put all the effort to make sure that the production design is exactly the same and stuff like that.
I think it's partly a sign of the times. I mean, beer commercials in the 80s, I mean, that was where it was at. You'd have a classic rock song and people sitting in a bar or sitting, so now it's more about what medicines they're selling on TV and things like that. So yeah, it's definitely followed the parallel with the country.
Sure. I mean, they're always going to have the best graphics folks that you can have for this type of TV show. No one that does this has a better budget. So like if it's possible, those people have been hired and it's going to make its way on.
Right. Yeah. This isn't a commercial parody, but obviously there was so many articles I read over not that many articles, but I saw it a lot on my Twitter where how they were talking about how they captured Kamala Harris's suit. I think it was a pantsuit. Like an hour and a half after their speech, like just the amount of work they have to put into it. It just shows kind of how much the show cares about getting it right. It's not just about the comedy; it's about having the exact costuming down to a T.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's amazing.
Yeah, it was awesome. But all right, Bill, what is number 3?
Well, having said all that about parodies, and then here's number 3. Happy Fun Ball has nothing to do with anything, but just that was really the first time they went all in with 87 disclaimers, and I mean, nothing will ever be better than "Do not taunt Happy Fun Ball."
Oh, that's great. Yeah. Haskell or Haynes got anything? How about you, Haskell? Anything on Happy Fun Ball? Would you buy that product?
I would, but I'm gonna let that one ride.
That's fair. What about you, Haynes?
I'm buying Happy Fun Balls all day.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, if you actually look at the in the back of your apartment, you just have a pile of Happy Fun Balls over there, just collecting dust. But all right, cool. Well, Happy Fun Ball. Let's we'll move on. We'll toss the ball over to number 2 on your list.
Number 2 would be, and this is going back. You mentioned about high school days and how that's the biggest cast for you, but this was my first commercial parody when I started watching in '86. Adobe, the $179 car made out of clay, and walking into school on Monday and singing, "Hey, we're Adobe." I mean that's when it's that's when it's good, when you can talk about it with your friends for the next 2 months.
Was that something? Do you feel was that one that just got talked about so much back then?
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, it was really the first showcase for Phil Hartman. I think that was, we got to see his pitch man, and how he would do that for the next 10 or 15 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
yeah. I feel like the role that Phil Hartman played on the show when he was on, he was just the perfect guy to be in those commercial parodies, because he was like someone that you could have easily bought in like any sort of dramatic role, and he can sell you on anything the way he committed to character. So definitely when I think of Phil Hartman, commercial parodies is kind of something that I'll always remember from his time on the show.
He has like salesman and like country club guy just written all over him. He's just great for both those things.
Yeah. Also just playing dads, fatherly figures. Just perfect.
I'm glad you chose that as number 3, because I think that just with Phil Hartman and everything just encapsulates everything that is SNL sensibilities. So that's a great choice for your top 5.
And an all-time favorite cast member of mine. I mean, he nails it every time. Phil Hartman never let you down. He never let you down.
Never. Nope.
Yeah. Well, we'll get more into that kind of discussion when we play the SNL Desert Island game. A little foreshadowing there, but cool. You guys have anything else on this one, or should we move on to the number 1 pick on Bill's list?
Let's move it.
All right. What do we got? The best commercial parody of all time, according to Superfan Bill.
Funny enough, the number 1 has very little of cast member in it, but a little bit of Anna Gasteyer, but oops, I crapped my pants.
Yes.
Those 2 old people, God rest their soul, because God knows they're gone by now, but they're just, I'm wearing them, and I just did, and the iced tea slow motion into the, I mean, just, so great.
That one, your list is not full of crap. I'll say that. That one, there such low hanging fruit there. But yeah, no, that one definitely. When I first started getting into SNL, I bought. I think they had the best of commercial parodies DVD, and I just remember watching that one, and it was right at the age where that potty humor, it's just absolutely destroyed me. So I love that as a kid. Andrews, plural. Do you guys have anything you want to add to that one?
I mean, Anna Gasteyer is she's so good at at those roles where, I guess pun intended, now that I can see it coming, the shit is hitting the fan, but she is so calm about everything. That's why she's perfect for the Martha Stewart character, so yeah, just a great role for her.
Definitely.
Yeah, and you talked earlier about sketches that kind of have some life to them, and you keep talking about them. For me, growing up, SNL was the family Sunday table. You talked about what SNL was, and you go over old sketches, and that's one of the sketches where you're everyone's got to show Nana that sketch and see what her reaction is. That's one of those ultimate no one's gonna see that one coming. You got to show them and get their reaction from it. So great choice.
So now I need to ask Haskell, did you guys ever show your Nana that sketch? Because I don't know. I feel like if I were to show that to my my bubby, she'd be very insulted if I were to show that to her.
Well, yeah, we did, but I should note my grandmother, also a huge fan of Saturday Night Live. Her favorite TV show to sit down and watch at night is Family Guy, though. So she might be a different breed.
Right.
So,
wow, that's great. Well, great, cool. Well, that's definitely one I understand is number one on your list. That's awesome. Cool. Well, do you guys have anything else to add to Bill's list, or should we move on to the next contestant?
I just have two sketches that I think should fall into the honorable mention category, which would be I think Mom Jeans today still has incredible legs. People still love Mom Jeans, and kind of not as underrated in recent years, maybe in the history of SNL. But Vanessa Bayer did those pizza roll commercials around the Super Bowl for every straight season, and they just kept getting more and more outrageous. And so I think that those 3 or 4 sketches deserve a place on the honorable mention list.
Yeah, they were definitely in the top 20 if we had gone that far. So,
I mean, we're talking about parodies and we're talking about Phil Hartman. We have to mention Colon Blow, but it's so well known, people are going to talk about that anyway. But I mean, it's something that might be considered for a top list. But I'm sure you did.
Yes.
Yeah, no, I think that would certainly fall on my list. I'm happy, Haskell, that you mentioned those pizza roll sketches because, like you said, they just one by one. I don't know how many times they did them, but they just, sometimes SNL with a recurring bit can kind of, it nails it the first couple times, and then diminishing returns, with all things in life. But I personally don't think that any of those pizza roll sketches did not live up to the original. They all got so absurd. I mean, I remember there was one where they're all watching, all the hungry guys are watching TV, and they're brainwashed a little bit, and they're watching the football game. They're oh, touchdown, just all very monotone. And I just thought that was the most amazing thing. I watched that recently. But yeah, I love those sketches. So good pull on that one. Well, Bill, that was an awesome list. I am going to turn it over to Mr. Haynes over here, and I would love to hear what you put together.
Well, coming off the extensive political season, I figure we'll just go ahead and wash ourselves of all this and talk about the top 5 presidential impressions.
Ooh, very nice.
So,
number 5.
Number 5, a man that we cannot stop mentioning tonight, Phil Hartman as Bill Clinton.
Very nice.
Phil Hartman's Bill Clinton is really, really good. Obviously the McDonald's sketch is got to be like just an absolute all-timer. Like I said, Phil Hartman, everything he touches is gold to me with SNL. A lot of people have done a lot of impressions of a lot of presidents throughout the history of the show, but I think Phil Hartman's Bill Clinton absolutely deserves to be in the top 5.
Definitely. Well, that brings up an interesting conversation to the table because obviously, just after Phil Hartman left the show, Daryl Hammond joined and was on for 14 years. And, he still, every once in a while pops in as Bill Clinton. So I'm assuming that his Bill Clinton isn't on your list, Haynes, for the rest of the political impressions. But Bill or Haskell, if you had to pick between the Phil Hartman Bill Clinton or the Daryl Hammond Bill Clinton,
don't get ahead of yourself.
Okay. So maybe should I save it? Should I save it? I spoke too soon.
What about the Chris Elliott Bill Clinton? I mean, come on.
Don't think about the cut.
I guess it is wrong of me to not bring that one into the conversation. That might be number 1 on Haynes' list. We don't know.
That might be. Sorry if I ruined your list.
yeah. But all right. Do you guys have anything to add to the Phil Hartman pick, or should we move on?
I just want to say that Donald sketch, and that quick era, I guess, of SNL is maybe the most Midwestern SNL's ever appealed to. Had Phil Hartman, who had this very Johnny Carson Midwestern appeal, as opposed to maybe the New York thing that kind of applies to a lot of comedians and a lot of people who came to SNL. So I think that blip in time was the most Midwestern appeal that SNL had, and I think there's a lot of people around the country in Middle America who almost missed that, and almost to a kind of their detriment as a fan of SNL.
Haynes, let's move on to your number 4 spot on the list.
Okay, so number 4, I mean, the guy did it for it's not just how long he did it, and other people have done impressions for a really long time too, but it's the way this character is portrayed. Whereas with some impressions, I'm giving a lot of credit to the accuracy, the nuance of the mannerisms and the speech patterns. But sometimes there's someone who just takes the character and just makes them such a flat out idiot to laugh at that I think we can't ignore, Alec Baldwin's Trump. I mean, because with a lot of these guys, you're laughing, you're like I said, you're appreciating the actual, the tight technical aspects of the impression. And I don't think Baldwin's impression is that technically accurate, but he doesn't even have to have a line to make it funny. Just like with his Trump, I mean, just when he pauses in between words, just the look on his face, the way he hangs his face, just it seems like every second of that impression is meant to make people laugh. And I do think it's been pretty good. We've talked about Hammond, and he obviously does a fantastic Trump, and maybe a more accurate Trump, but I don't think we can let a top 5 list go by without talking about an extremely controversial and still pretty relevant president, and the impressions of him. So I think Alec Baldwin's Trump is coming in at a hot number 4.
Yeah, let me just say, in my opinion, really good at the beginning when he took over the role. Once he found it, I think what will always stick with me was his. I think it was one of the debate sketches where he says, "My mouth looks like a tiny little butthole." That's the one that always stick with me. And then I feel like there was some phoning it in the middle where the character kind of got a little stale.
Yeah, I'd agree with both of you. I mean, I think if he had lost in 2016 and that was the only time we saw Baldwin do it, it'd be a lot better remembered. But I think his accuracy is pretty good. I think Daryl's was better, but
Agreed.
it didn't have to be controversial. He was doing Pizza Hut commercials. So there wasn't this hanging over of this politicalness. And ironically, it's one of Phil's worst impressions when he did it back in the late 80s. I mean, he was doing it like a New York mobster. Didn't even sound like him. But
well, that's accurate in one way.
Yeah, that's very, very true. But yeah, no, I don't hate his impression as much as I've heard other people say they do. So I can go with that.
Well, that's interesting that you put Baldwin on your list, Haynes, because obviously, it's definitely been an impression that has rubbed people the wrong way, in the sense that, there's all the controversy of, having someone that's not a part of the cast be so involved in the show, even though it's someone like Alec Baldwin, who, if you guys can see, I have his best of right over there. It's one of these two, the other Steve Martin. A Steve Martin Trump, that'd be interesting. But obviously he has a history of the show. So, I think in that sense, he should get a free pass to just be on whenever he wants. But it is something that will be interesting to see as we move forward the end of the year when the show comes back, if Baldwin will come back as Trump or if he's done. But that's an interesting pick for number 4.
I feel like he's so done.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, honestly, a quick sidebar. What do you guys think of Taran Killam's Trump? Not to blow up your spot. That could be on your list, the 2 episodes that he did Trump. Do you guys have any thoughts on that? I kind of think they might have pulled the plug on it a little early.
I think Taran Killam is really good with impressions. He's particularly the voice aspect. I think he's always done really well. But obviously, I don't think anyone's ever mentioned that one as particularly notable.
Sure. Yeah. Bill or Haskell, anything?
I like Killam's run on the show as well. I wasn't a big fan of his Trump. I was still, as I was when Baldwin came on, I was still kind of hoping that Daryl would come back and do it. Short walk down from doing the announcing to
right.
But I mean, overall, I like Taran a lot, but I wasn't a big fan of his Trump.
Sure. All right, Haynes, what do we got? Oh, one more thing to add?
Well, before we move on to number 3, I will just address listen, you say it's controversial because, he's not exactly a cast member, and he's not a cast member, although he's almost like an honorary cast member at this point, kind of. I did not weigh that. I did not hold that against him. Because I'm really just talking about the laugh factor here. And in case there's any debate where I fall on the side of the issue of non-cast members appearing on the show too much, you may notice that my Twitter handle is SNL has a cast.
Right. There you go.
So that is an argument I make pretty frequently.
Right. So that is another interesting layer, having him on your list. Well, cool. Well, let's move on to your number 3 favorite political impression. Not
gonna do it. Number 3, not gonna do it.
All right, number 2.
So when I first started to fall in love with SNL in the mid 90s, they were Comedy Central was playing all these reruns of basically just a few years earlier, in like 96, 97, 98, they're playing all this stuff from 92 through 94, 95. So Dana Carvey was one of the first people I fell in love with, and that George H.W. Bush impression is obviously, I don't think I'm saying anything controversial by saying it's probably a lot of people's, favorite or top in that top group of impressions. Dana Carvey, I think, is underrated in so many ways, or maybe he's not. Maybe it's just been couple generations of, cast members that we've moved through, and people don't talk about him as much anymore. But man, when you go back and watch that stuff, he's just, his impressions are so good. And so, yes, number 3, Dana Carvey, George H.W. Bush.
Well, yeah, Dana Carvey is, what can you say about him? He's a legend. Kind of wish, he was still kind of around in the pop culture sphere. When he pops up every now and then, he always makes me laugh. Bill or Haskell, do you guys want to add on to the number 3 pick on Haynes' list?
I love that you said that, because he was my first favorite, even before Phil. He was just so good. And you look at his first episode where he did Chopping Broccoli, and he killed it from Jump Street. His Bush was incredible. And you can look at the progression of his impersonation. The first couple times he didn't have any of that down. Like, it's so funny to watch him in the debates from like 87, 88. He didn't have any of the mannerisms. He didn't have the voice down, and he just kept working on it. He didn't come out of the gates with it perfect. And I really appreciate that, the fact that he was able to do that. But yeah, it would be hard for me to pick between him and Perot as far as Dana's best.
First of all, great point about the progress. But since you mentioned Perot, I was watching an old episode the other day, and I totally forgot. There's at least one episode where Ross Perot was done by Sherry O'Terry, and it's kind of amazing. It was pretty fun.
That's funny. I don't know if I ever saw that one. Am I making this up? Did Spade ever play Perot ever, or was he was like
Spade
a stand-in?
stood on the stage while Dana did both impressions,
which again is
the
like
long shot. They would have Spade on the stage, which
is just a testament to how great Dana Carvey was, to where they needed him to play both parts, because both of them were incredible. He's
the white Eddie Murphy.
there you go. Haskell, anything to add?
Yeah, I just want to say, I think there's 2 types of great impressionists. There's the very technically sound ones, your Jay Farrows of the world. And then I think there's the people who can just turn impressions into great characters.
Definitely. Haynes, you want to move on to your number 2?
Number 2. Well, it hath been foreshadowed that we would come back around to Daryl Hammond's Bill Clinton, which, it's about as good as it gets. Like, Daryl Hammond, I still think is the best impressionist in the history of the show. Haskell mentioned, the technical accuracy of guys like Farrow, and Chloe Fineman is going to be, she's going to be outstanding for a long time. But Daryl Hammond, God, he's the reason I kind of wanted to be an impressionist growing up. And I think it was because of Daryl Hammond, and a little bit of Robin Williams, because I just love guys that can blaze through like 100 different voices, just like that. But man, Daryl Hammond's Bill Clinton is, I said I'm judging this on the laughs. I don't know. I don't know that there's many political impressions that made me laugh funnier than that. He falls into his character so naturally. And the Clinton character, this may just be something about the Clinton character, because I feel the same way about Hartman. Like, Clinton's this character that you can just kind of fall into, like this big pillow of laid back Southern, I'm just here for the women, kind of like, like it's anyway, Daryl Hammond's Clinton, amazing, top notch. Number 2.
Well, great. Well, I spoiled that pick a little bit earlier. So now we know where Haynes stands on Clinton, Hammond versus Hartman. But Bill or Haskell, do you guys want to speak your truth on that matter now?
Yeah, I'd have to agree. I'd have to give it to Daryl as well. And he happened to be there at the time. He really came. He did it for years, but he came into it with Monica Gate and all the sketches they did with Saddam Hussein and Lewinsky, and Bill's standing in the White House kitchen, eating everything that he can find and having the pizza delivery guy come. I mean, he made it his own just from expanding it and making it almost cartoonish, but not in a bad way. So yeah, I'd go with that as well.
It was cartoonish in a good way. You're right. Yeah.
Definitely. Haskell, what about you?
Yeah, that character just doesn't get old. That obviously Bill Clinton kind of dominated news headlines for a while, like most presidents would, but maybe more than anybody up until Trump. So, and that character doesn't get old. So, he's a great character, a great impression.
Yeah. And it's amazing with Daryl Hammond because obviously he was on the show for 14 years and, still has that relationship now that he's the announcer. I mean, you can watch a Bill Clinton sketch of his from the mid-90s. You can watch one from just a couple years ago when they did the Celebrity Family Feud. It was like the Trumps versus the Clintons, and just him being like, "I'm here to play the feud." It's just like incredible, and he's flirting with, I think it was Margot Robbie playing Ivanka. Just like incredible stuff. So really good pick. Definitely makes sense that he's on your list. All right, let's hear number one. Who's it gonna be?
Well, it really came down to Joe Piscopo and Charles Rocket as Ronald Reagan. That's a joke. Well, since it hasn't been mentioned so far, I wouldn't be surprised if people are already thinking about it. Even though it wasn't particularly long-lived, I told you this is all based on the laugh factor. I mean, was there ever anything funnier than Will Ferrell as George Bush? It's as good as it gets, right? Like just a second ago, I'm saying Daryl Hammond as Clinton is about as good as it gets. But if there's anything that inches over that line, I think it's Will Ferrell as George W. Bush. I mean, so many of the sketches that he portrayed him in, we think of as like modern classics now. I feel like people still talk about them. The presidential debate sketch with, Lockbox and Strategery. I mean, that's an all-timer. It's an all-timer. And it's not just because of the great writing, and the writing is fantastic, but, Ferrell's delivery of this guy who's like cool and confident, but also kind of an idiot is just so good. So Will Ferrell, the absolute greatest presidential impression in SNL history. Will Ferrell, George W. Bush, fight me on it.
Well, that is, it makes sense that he is number one on your list. I'm sure he's number one on a bunch of people's lists. Haskell, let's bring you in here. I mean, what do you got to say about George W. Bush, Will Ferrell's impression?
You won't get an inkling of disagreement from me on number one. It is the all-time best. If you have not seen the one-man show that he did as the farewell to George W. Bush at the end of his presidency, you have to go watch it tonight. It's hysterical. I think very few people in comedy have ever felt more comfortable playing a character than Will Ferrell felt playing his George W. Bush.
That's a really great point. I mean, thank you for bringing that up. He literally did a one-man show as George W. Bush on Broadway for it was at least a year. So that's I feel like that automatically gets you a spot at number one. I mean, hopefully you guys are right that Baldwin's done playing Trump, and that we're not going to get the one-man show Baldwin as Trump on Broadway once that opens back up. That would be a sight to see. Bill, anything to add on this one?
Well, I think it speaks volumes that when Will left the show, they couldn't replace him with W. I mean, they went through 4 different guys playing him until they finally got to Sudeikis doing it okay, serviceably. But yeah, I mean, that's never happened before where you had this iconic person playing the president and they couldn't replace them. I mean, you think about, people leaving, like when Phil left and Daryl stepped in and did Clinton. I mean, you always had kind of a transition to another guy, and they couldn't do it because he was just so good at it. So yeah, great pick.
Awesome. Well, that's a great list of political impressions. The only, as far as honorable mentions goes, I mean, in recent years, even though the impression isn't much of an impression, but I mean, Larry David as Bernie Sanders, I mean, when that came to be, just as like a meta thing with the show and Larry's history with the show, him being back. And that's like the only reason probably that he hosted the show is because he was already coming in so much as Bernie Sanders. And I've loved I think 2 times that Larry has hosted the show. I mean, so that definitely gets an honorable mention for me.
Listen, I did decide to, and that's a great impression. It's hilarious, and I'm a huge Larry David fan. But I did keep it to people who won the presidency.
Got it.
So
I got
because otherwise there's a ton. There's so many great.
Great, cool. Well, awesome list.
Can I touch on one thing that
yes?
Just one thing that Haynes, he joked about one thing, and I think it's a very kind of weird, maybe a weird time in NL history that it came about. For a president who is so influential and has kind of a very specific voice and maybe speech pattern, the fact that outside of maybe a handful of some really good sketches, but only a handful of memorable sketches, SNL does not have the biggest catalog of Ronald Reagan sketches, or they impersonated him, and there are some good sketches there, but nowhere near kind of where some of the other presidents are.
That's funny you say that, because that was actually, I made about 3 or 4 different things for Time Machine, and that was one of them. And I think that was purely because of Ebersol. He decided to not make it political. And so you just had these sketches with Piscopo, and you didn't even see his face most of the time. They didn't even do debates in '84 with Mondale and Reagan. So until you got to the Phil Hartman cast, you didn't really, I mean, Randy Quaid, but let's not think about that too much. But you didn't have a lot of political sketches. But yeah, you're absolutely right. And it's great. I wish that was one of those things that they had done, so you would have that kind of time capsule of that time.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that, because I was thinking about this idea, and I said, well, just while I work through these ideas, let me go back and I'll try and see maybe some lesser known sketches that I didn't remember as much. I said, all right, well, I'll just go back to I'll go to the first episode after Ronald Reagan was elected, because I want to see I want to see I want to see that early impression of him, and he's not even in the episode. They didn't touch on him, and I actually, I started flipping around through the next few episodes and couple seasons, and just noticed that there's just, you're right. They did not. There's just not that much Reagan material, and maybe that's why, in my opinion, they never found anyone who did a good Reagan. And even though I like Phil Hartman a lot, but his Reagan wasn't that great, and I don't know that anyone's was.
Yeah. Well, good points all around. I really enjoyed hearing your list, Haynes. And finally, we got Haskell. What do you have for us as far as a top 5?
Yeah, mine's a little less tangible in terms of specific sketches or impressions. I tried to do something a little different. I picked up my top 5 people outside of Lorne Michaels who really understood what SNL is about and kind of the sensibilities. I've kind of said it a few times in this podcast, but the sensibilities that are SNL. So I picked my top 5 that did that. Some of the greatest SNL cast members ever are not on this list. This is simply just the people that I think really understood what this show is about, why it exists, and why it has lasted as long as it has.
Let's hear it.
All right, number 5, I'm starting with Adam Sandler. What he did as a Weekend Update guest, with his songs, with his impressions. It's been said before, he deconstructed sketch comedy right there at the Weekend Update desk as a guest. Just he understood that sketch comedy, SNL, it should feel like you're doing a lot with a little, and everything he did almost felt thrown together in the best way possible.
Great. Yeah, I mean, that's a really good point with talking about Weekend Update, because obviously, you watch his best of Adam Sandler's, and just everything that he did at the desk. I guess mainly with Kevin Nealon was just great stuff. Bill, got any thoughts on that one?
Love the Sandman. That's everything he did with all his songs. I mean, he just and the fact that you can turn that on 30 years later and it's still hilarious. You can't say that a lot about a lot of the topical stuff. So yeah, he found a way to stay relevant even to this day. Yeah.
And Haynes, any thoughts on the Sandman?
I mean, if you're talking about people who, understood the show and made an impression, I think that's absolutely a great pick. One of the things that kind of got me into SNL was we were, Comedy Central was showing a lot of, reruns and stuff back in the day. And like I said, they were showing reruns of, Sandler had just gotten off the show. And so we were seeing a lot of those reruns. And my buddy bought an Adam Sandler comedy CD at Sam Goody or something. Holy crap! We became obsessed with that. They're all going to laugh at you. And then and what was the other one that was really big?
Willie.
Yeah. Oh my God. Toll Booth Willie, the beating of a high school janitor. His mom talking about playing with your cock and balls, and the goat that trying to catch footballs with his mouth. Oh my God. So Adam Sandler, he really kind of started me on that path of being obsessed with these people and what they were doing. Great pick. Number 5.
Great. Yeah. And just one note on the Sandman. I think on this podcast we've talked about a little bit how his relationship with the show has changed over the years, and he's been more involved lately. First being really with SNL 40 when he reprised his role as Opera Man. I'm pretty sure I had tears in my eyes. It was just an incredible moment, and then him doing it when he hosted was just awesome stuff. Let's move on to your number 4 pick, Haskell. What you got?
Yeah, the next one is The Lonely Island. Andy Samberg, but really the Lonely Island together. They really understood that very rarely do you remember full episodes of SNL. You remember sketches. And what they did with the SNL digital short was huge. It revitalized the show after kind of the post-Will Ferrell years. When there was kind of a changeover in turning SNL into kind of this YouTube machine. And we talked earlier about, sketches that you have to show people. The SNL digital shorts were the sketches that I showed kids in school who didn't watch SNL. When I was in middle school and high school, showing my friends Dick in a Box and I'm on a boat and I just had sex. For a second, it made SNL cool again to show your friends these sketches that you knew they were going to find hilarious. They didn't watch SNL, but it was they could find it on YouTube.
Awesome pick. I definitely co-signed that one. Haynes, let me bring you in here. What you think of that?
Well, it's it's a great point about talking about the Lonely Island and clip videos and the rise of YouTube. A point that I've actually made in the past is that I'll admit, though, they're kind of my least favorite part of the episode. Oftentimes, I mean, listen, they're full of great jokes, and that's what matters to me most. Is that I'm getting laughs? I'm here for the jokes, but I am a sucker for live performance. I am obsessed with stand-up comedy and concerts. I love watching people do it in the moment. I love you can feel this energy, that that little bit of nervousness, when it's happening live and in real time, and the interaction between people. None of it's canned. You're not doing multiple takes and then putting the graphics on and stuff. The reason that I'm so obsessed with this show is because it's called Saturday Night Live, not Saturday Night Pre-Tape. So I actually have, and I know this is very controversial, but I actually think that in some ways, at least for viewers like me, when Andy Samberg really increased the popularity of that stuff and started getting more of that Lonely Island stuff on the air, I wonder if there's got to be a segment of fans out there like me who would prefer less of that and would like to see more live action. I want to see the guys on stage, and I don't hate it. I don't hate it at all, because I'm here to laugh. And Bill's whole list was commercial parodies. Well, none of those are live, and so it's always been a part of the show. So I don't have a problem with it, but I am a sucker for live performance, and I always want to see more things live than pre-taped.
Well, that is an ice hot take over there from Haynes, talking about my boy Andy Samberg like that. But no, that's definitely I
love Andy Samberg.
That's a interesting point of view. I mean, Bill, what do you think about that?
I agree with you partly. I think they've gone a little too heavy with that in the last couple of years. And you look at the darkest timeline that this show could have taken. If Ebersol had stayed in 1985, he wanted to go completely pre-tape, and it would have ruined the show. We'd be talking about the show that ended back in 1990. So yeah, I mean, there can be too much of a good thing, but the digital shorts, they saved the whole genre on the show, because TV Funhouse had completely run out of gas by that point. You didn't really have anything else in the can in a normal week. So when he came out, and then just it coinciding with YouTube and, being able to watch clips. Yeah, I love that pick.
Well, I'll say this though, to Haskell's point, the quality of the content is so high. Like, it's so funny and it's so enjoyable, and these are great. These are songs that get stuck in your head, and you're laughing about them and singing them 2 days later. So I do love the content.
Yeah, no, like you're saying, the material was great content. It was catchy. Probably the last album I ever bought was Incredibad. The actual CD, physical CD that I ever bought was Lonely Island's Incredibad. It was great stuff. And just for me personally, that era of the show is like we've talked about, is when I was in high school. So when me and my friends were watching together or texting each other, when that SNL digital short title card would come onto the screen, you knew oh baby, what have we? There's it's a moment that you, and when they bring that back every once in a while, whether Andy Samberg's hosting or not. I know they've done it a couple times since he's left the show. It's a crap, here we go, like buckle up moment. So but all right, cool. Well, let's move on to your number 3 pick, Haskell. What you got?
Yeah, so I'm gonna switch over to a writer, and that's Jim Downey, who is all SNL sensibilities, right? I think the most important thing that he brought to SNL, if you from reading things about Jim Downey, is he's probably more of a conservative, which I don't think people would expect for SNL. I think the biggest thing that he brought to SNL really is the idea that making fun of your own side of the political party is not admitting that your side is wrong. We can laugh at both sides, and it's not admitting that your side is wrong to laugh at what your side does. I think he brought in this ability for SNL where you punch up, right? In comedy, you punch up, but punch. You know what I mean? You got to come fierce with it. So Jim Downey, number 3.
Awesome. Bill, anything to add about Jim Downey, legendary writer?
Yeah, I love that pick. Yeah, you're right, and a lot of people don't know that he's on that side, and it'll be kind of interesting these next 4 years to see how the Twitterverse reacts to the jokes about Biden. Hopefully, they take him as well stride as they did with the Trump jokes. Fingers crossed. But yeah, no, I mean he has such a wide swath over the history of the show and I mean he made people who wouldn't normally follow politics know more about politics. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's a great point, and it'll be interesting to see, like you said, like over the next 4 years, it's going to be a different show. Definitely. Haynes, anything to add about Jim Downey?
Well, obviously he's a legend, and you talk about him being conservative and being able to make fun of that. Well, I mean, the most likable people in the world all self-deprecate, at least a little bit. Not too much to make themselves look like complete idiots, but I mean, anybody likable self-deprecates. So like that's part of a key to like through success in like so many other aspects of life. Absolutely, in entertainment. So as you're making a list of people who got the show. Yeah, that guy got the show. Maybe his nephew didn't, but he did.
Yeah, that's a good point. I need Robert Downey Jr. to come back and host again. It's been too long. But one thing I'll add about Jim Downey is not only behind the camera was he great with the writing, but got to give a shout out to the Jonah Hill's dating. I think it's Andy's dad. I think that's a digital short. That is an incredible piece of content right there. That's one of my favorites. But all right, let's hear number 2.
Number 2 is Robert Downey Jr.
Wow. No, there we go. Back to back.
No, but
you had me for half a second.
We've come to this guy so many times tonight. And we probably will keep coming back to him, but it's Phil Hartman is number 2 for me. There's something about SNL which is like, this is so ridiculous what we're doing. We wrote this variety show in a week. We're going to perform it live. Nobody is saying we have to perform it live. And I'm going to perform it so earnestly. I'm going to be what seems like the most genuine person on the planet right now and deliver that way that Phil Hartman just understood. And we talked about him enough in what he was able to do, in the character that he was able to play. But just that ability that he had.
Awesome. Haynes, you want to jump in here? I mean, you've mentioned what else more is there to say about the great Phil Hartman on this episode?
I didn't know, but I love that this has just turned into like a Phil Hartman celebration.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, like, he can do no wrong. Oh man, what a great pick. I'm like about to get sentimental. I couldn't agree more, and I don't want to start rambling like an idiot.
Bill, anything to add on Phil Hartman?
No, I mean, everything has been said and more will be said, I'm sure. But I love the fact that the three of you are a little bit younger than me and really appreciate the fact that what this guy did. I got to watch this guy live every week when I was in high school. And I mean, it was just phenomenal. It was just phenomenal to watch this guy work. And, that was one of the saddest days of my life when he died, like just even more than Farley. I mean, Farley, you knew was coming, but so great pick at number 2.
That's a really great point. Just the fact that, over the years, he has just resonated, no matter, how many years goes by since he left the show. He's always, he was the glue, of that cast. Well, awesome. Well, Phil Hartman's number 2. I mean, who's number 1? Let's hear it.
Before I get to number 1, anybody who's watching the video, I do apologize. My animal's trying to steal camera time. I'm gonna have to get Wolf.
That's great. It's a good visual for those people watching us on YouTube.
I've never heard a more sarcastic. I've never heard a more sarcastic apology than to the internet for having cats.
The internet loves cats. All right, let's hear it.
For number one for me, this is going to be completely biased to the years that I grew up watching it, but I think this is the greatest writer in SNL history. Probably won't top any list for greatest performer, but I think the guy who understands what SNL is all about more than anybody else is Seth Meyers. I think he just understands the SNL formula. He gets how to ramp up SNL jokes. He gets how to ramp up jokes that are live. He knows how to ramp up jokes that are on update. He once, if you've ever watched those documentaries they did about the SNL different decades, he has a quote in there when he says, SNL is just so back of the classroom funny. And I think that's what he brought to SNL is it's supposed to be what you would come up with your friends while you're fooling around in the back of the classroom. And I think he brought that every single week that he was a writer and a head writer and a weekend update anchor now.
Bill, do you want to comment on the great Seth Meyers?
Gotta love Seth. Yeah, I mean, it's funny to watch his progression over the show as well. I mean, his first 3 years are so unmemorable. And, he's always the guy standing there, not even having a line and, being able to get on Weekend Update. And I mean, of course, his writing is so great and he did it for such a long time. So, yeah.
I'm so glad we found a job for him other than John Kerry.
Good point.
Great pick. Absolutely great pick. He is probably maybe the best writer in SNL history. And I just want to ask you, since this is your list, and it's about people who get the show. I mean, do you think he would be the perfect person, or would he take over for Lorne afterwards? I've said before, I think Higgins is like a producer's producer, like I can see him like taking over and being the perfect follow-up to Lorne. But if people, could you see them asking Seth to come back, and do you think he would? And your thoughts?
The way I look at it, I look at it as, and I know you're involved in the SNL Reddit too. The 4 answers that people always come up with who should replace Lorne is Tina Fey, Kenan Thompson, Seth Meyers, and now kind of John Mulaney's popped up a little bit. I don't think any of those 4 are going to replace Lorne Michaels. I think Higgins will replace him. Now, could Seth Meyers replace Higgins someday? That's where I think it will happen. I think the ages don't line up right now. I don't think Seth Meyers wants to give being a performer. I mean, Lorne always said he's going to do SNL until he dies. And obviously Lorne is getting up there in age. And now he's kind of changed his tone a little bit. He did an interview recently saying, I think I'm going to wander off after SNL, after season 50, which is coming up very quickly. And I just don't think Seth Meyers is going to want to walk away from late night at that point. We're talking 4 years in the future. I don't think he's going to walk away from being a performer. And I think to do SNL and to continue doing SNL the way it is, he would have to give that up. So I think he's taking over for Lorne. Could he run SNL someday? Absolutely.
I think that's a really good point. I think Seth has, said himself, there's nothing he does better than telling jokes behind a desk. So I don't see why he should stop doing that anytime soon. Even if Lorne leaves in 5 years. Yeah, great point. Yeah.
Yeah, no, Seth, that's just a great pick for number 1. That is interesting that John Mulaney is someone that's come up recently, because he's another person who, he's someone who, as much as he is a writer, as a performer, he, I've said this on my Twitter, he should be hosting The Tonight Show. That's what he should really be doing. Not to, put into question Jimmy Fallon's job security or anything like that. But my dream lineup of late night would be Mulaney on The Tonight Show, Seth Meyers on late night. That's must-see TV right there. And Mulaney's actually joining the writers' room for Seth Meyers, I just read. So, well, that's great. Well, these top 5s were awesome. Haskell, do you have something to add there? Or
no, I'm good.
Oh yeah, those were really, really great. Just to hear everyone's unique perspective on everything was really fun. I guess really quickly, I can read you guys the top 5 I came up with. Have any comments?
Oh no, we're picking your list apart, pal.
Fair enough. So something that I love about SNL is almost like the SNL universe within SNL, the meta kind of stuff that can go on. During a monologue when they go down the hall and you see all the pictures on the wall, and it's like a universe within the show. So I picked my top 5 favorite SNL meta moments. And again, this is something where it's kind of hard to classify what's a meta moment. Is it when Nicolas Cage shows up with Andy Samberg on Weekend Update, getting the cage? I mean, yeah, that's meta, but I was trying to keep it more focused on SNL kind of stuff. So my number 5 pick, and this is lower on the list for me just because this era of the show doesn't hold as much of a place in my heart as maybe the older generation, but the season 11 cast fire in the studio when I forget who it was, pours gasoline on the studio, and Lorne Michaels goes in and saves John Lovitz from the fire, and pretty much the entire cast, except for I think Dennis Miller, maybe Nora Dunn, didn't move on. But I mean, that's just great. I mean, I don't know exactly, and you guys might know at the time if they 100% knew that a bunch of them were gonna get fired from the show. But I mean, that was just an awesome moment. Do you guys want to jump in on that one?
It was Billy Martin, the Yankee manager.
Billy Martin, yeah. But
I think they all kind of had a feeling. Since I started watching the season after that, I kind of got a feeling from that. But it was the only time in SNL history where it wasn't renewed for a full season in 86, 87. So right. I think they had a feeling that they knew everybody was on the hot seat except for Lovitz.
Mm-hmm.
Great pick.
Yeah, thank you. Haynes, got anything to comment on that one?
Well, first of all, I love the idea of the list. So great sketch. I too love when they kind of break the fourth wall and let the audience in to what's going on. I always think that's fun. It wouldn't be fun if they overdid it, but they do it perfectly. By doing it sparsely from time to time. And great concept for the list as well.
Thank you. And then Haskell, anything to add on this one?
I think very famously pissed a lot of that cast off. Not that it matters because they weren't coming back, but I remember it sort of did not sit well with most of that cast that was the ending. I think also a good moment there was, I might be misremembering, but didn't they put question marks after everybody's name in the credits as if to signify? Yes. So, couple different levels of meta there.
Yeah,
too close to home for some of those folks.
Yeah, I think it might have been because interestingly, I was trying to, when I was making this list, watch the sketch again. Couldn't find it on YouTube. It wasn't in the Peacock episode. I think it was Angelica Houston hosted that episode. They completely cut that out. So maybe they're thinking it was a little bit in poor taste, that bit. But number 4 on my list, I needed some representation of the Kyle Mooney SNL pre-tape universe that he's been doing over the past couple of years. And I'm pretty sure this one was cut for time, which is a travesty. But it counts on my list, my rules. The name of the sketch is New Cast Member, but also known as Adam Zeekman.
Yes.
That is
great.
Incredible. I mean, for people who don't know, the concept is Kyle Mooney's playing this cast member who's a new featured player who is has not gotten any screen time throughout the season. And they even I think it's they show a sketch that was earlier in the season of a classroom, and they green screen haphazardly the Adam Zeekman character into the sketch. It's just incredible. And then of course I'm pretty sure they go to this SNL carnival where there's one of those games where you hit with a mallet to try to get on the show, and like all like the little details they added, like the production design of the entire thing. I like that makes me want like that to be like what SNL actually is, like that sort of competitive nature, parodying that. So yeah, I mean that sketch I return to, every once in a while, and it kills me every time. Haskell, I saw you nodding to that one. Do you have anything to add?
Probably one of my most favorite episodes of the recent seasons. I think Kyle Mooney does that cringe humor so well. What sticks with me is in that sketch, he goes, they're backstage and he walks by Mikey Day and he goes, Mikey Day, Michael, and it's just like, a guy does that. So I love that this little universe that Kyle Mooney. So you have the SNL Winter Carnival. They've had a masquerade ball, as they've done one of the Leslie Jones sketches did.
Mm-hmm.
He feuded with Pete Davidson, where they did kind of like this old-timey, almost like Roman showdown thing. So I love the little universe they built where there's all these things happening at 30 Rock and in Studio 8H.
Yes, Haynes. Anything to add about the Kyle Mooney cinematic universe of SNL?
I love this so much, and Haskell said the cringe humor. Yeah, he's always playing this kind of like defeated and frustrated character, that version of himself, but also like it makes its way into his sketches too. Like a lot of the times, like even when he's playing characters that aren't himself, which is probably most of the time, he so often is playing this character that is like trying to achieve something or be this like bigger guy than he is, but like has like some sort of inner insecurity, and that seems to be like a constant theme. And I wonder if maybe SNL's like just a giant therapy session and we're all like his counselors. But love it. Yeah, love it. Great pick.
Yeah. Bill, any thoughts?
Kyle has found a niche that most cast members don't. I mean, it's kind of crazy, all the stuff that he's done. And I mean, his backstage stuff with Leslie was always hilarious, and that being an ongoing theme for so long. So yeah.
I easily could have made the entire list, just the Kyle Mooney pre-tapes, but if any of them got a spot, it was definitely this one. Don't understand why Lauren cut it from the show, but I don't. That's why I don't make the big bucks. Number 3 on my list, new cast member or Arcade Fire. That is it was a game show sketch, and it was the year where they brought in 6 featured players. And the only ones that made it past the season were Beck and Kyle, who are still on the show to this day. But it was just awesome. Just the concept. I think Tina Fey is like the contestant and Keenan is the host. And anytime you have Keenan as like a game show host in the sketch is great. And the concept alone is great, but the end button on the sketch where they bring out Lauren as like the phone a friend type thing, and I think it's even like Steve Higgins as the announcer. It's like, now remember, as the producer and creator of Saturday Night Live, Lauren hired one of these people not too long ago, and then he says, "Is it the black one?" Like referring to Keenan, and it's just like the best button. He's like. And Keenan's just like, this man's known me half my life. Like, it's just like incredible concept, and just the button alone on that one like kills me every time. Haynes, any thoughts on new cast member Arcade Fire?
That's an amazing sketch. I love that sketch. Absolutely love it. Especially when they bring in Lauren. Yeah, the Keenan line is amazing. That's so hilarious. And I think it might be Mike O'Brien, who is like who's the cast member, who's the last one, and of course Lauren picks the guy from Arcade Fire, and O'Brien's like, "You just interviewed me or something. You just hired me." Man, I consider that kind of like a recent modern classic. Like that's one that that's one that they're like. I don't know if you guys not to overly like plug Peacock. I think we've only mentioned it once, but you know, they do have the channels on there, and their SNL channel is great. But I feel like that's a sketch that is going to be like on there like once a day. You know,
definitely
like, great sketch.
Yeah. Bill, what are your thoughts on the new cast member Arcade Fire?
I can piggyback off of that. I mean, it is one of the recent classics for sure. And I mean, it was so jarring to see what was it? It was 5 white guys and Noel Wells, right? I mean,
right. Yeah.
So it was just like, really, this is what we're doing in 2011 or 2012 or whatever it was. And
I think it was even 2013.
Was it really? Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So. You know,
I mean, it was even more ridiculous.
Long ago.
Yeah,
that was the criticism that led them to hire Sashir
Yes.
Zamata.
Right,
yes.
Exactly.
Right.
So the fact that they could poke fun at themselves so quickly, that was great.
Right, Haskell, what do you think of the sketch?
I think you could actually encapsulate that whole episode as a pretty meta episode, because the monologue to that episode is Tina Fey bringing all of those new hires out, making them dance as some sort of rite of passage to being a featured player on SNL. And, you know, so it's that whole, and it's, I don't know, I'd have to go back and watch. They vary between those 2 sketches and Tina Fey mentioning it on the air. During that monologue, she says, it's a rebuilding year. It was very weird to see SNL kind of mention very blatantly, this is a rebuilding. We brought in all of these new featured players. You have no idea who they are. They're kind of faceless, but can you stick with us for a little bit? Because we still have Bobby Moynihan, so you're going to have some fun.
That is such a great point, because I think previously the previous season was when Sudeikis, Hader, and Fred Armisen left, and then the season before Andy Samberg and Kristen Wiig left, and then I think mid-season Seth left to do late night. So it was very much like a rebuilding year, and like it was almost like the Avengers Thanos snap. Only 2 of the 6 of them made it onto the show. So that almost adds even more of like a meta comedy to it, is like that only 2 of them, you know, had a history on the show, but they're all like great, funny people. I mean, Noah Wells is awesome. You know, Brooks Wheelan, Mike O'Brien, and John Milheisen. They're all great. Number 2 on my list. I had to get a little sentimental. This is kind of like a general, just the farewell sketch, and I want to highlight 2 of them. Like when a cast member leaves, the 2 that, like, I'm just kind of cheating here, but the 2 that really stick to mind to me is when Phil Hartman leaves the show. Again, bringing up Phil Hartman, but they do that big sketch with the entire cast. I just rewatched, where you know, they have Sandler and David Spade like kind of start off like the so long farewell as like the Gap Girls, and then like Sarah Silverman and Norm and Jay Moore are like, oh, we haven't been on the show very much this season, hopefully we're back. And then they kind of go one by one, and then it's Matt Foley saying so long farewell with Phil Hartman, and you know, it's just an emotional moment, not only because it might have been Chris Farley's last episode too. I don't think he might have been fired, but Phil Hartman was definitely leaving. Is that not his last episode?
Oh, he had one more year.
One more year? Okay, well, Phil Hartman was leaving, and then Farley shortly after, but then obviously we tragically lost both of them. So that is one farewell episode. And then for me, going back to the SNL high school is your era, Kristen Wiig's goodbye, some people say is a little overblown. But to me, like, that was like, I think my first big, like, as a fan of the show, like someone who was on when I started and you know, watching them for years and years, leaving, just it really was a testament to how big of a presence she was when she was on the show, that she, you know, got her own kind of moment with everyone in the cast. And then of course when Lauren comes out and, you know, dances with her, it's just a beautiful moment. So yeah, I mean, there's a ton of farewell sketches to highlight, but those are the ones that stand out to me. Bill, do you have any that come to mind to you, or these in particular?
Those 2 are probably the best. I agree with that. You know, the thing is, a lot of these guys don't know, or girls know, they're leaving, or they're still on the fence, so they don't get that full farewell. But yeah, I mean, you think about how many people didn't get to say goodbye. But yeah, the Kristen Wiig one stands out for me for sure. I mean, that was just so beautifully done, and uh, she was a presence of all of her own. I mean, and she gets a lot of flack these days, and I'm not really sure why, because all the recurring characters she had. But yeah, that was a beautiful moment.
Great. I agree. I agree with that one. Haskell, do you have anything to talk about with SNL farewell sketches?
The Kristen Wiig, my all-time number one favorite SNL moment. Unlike you, those were the year that they left was my junior year of high school. So that when that sketch happened, so some people say it's overdone, it's over emotional, but I mean, SNL Superfans here. SNL means a lot to me. It's almost like a little family member to me. So to see them get emotional about it means a lot to me. There's a nice little kind of almost hidden moment in that sketch. It's come out years later that Jay Sudeikis was not happy at that time at SNL. His relationship with the show had broken down, and Lorne was trying to convince him to stay on as Mitt Romney for one more season, which he ended up doing. But Time that reported that Sandberg, Wiig, and Sudeikis had left the show. And in that little dance, they all do a silly little dance with Kristen Wiig, except for her and Sudeikis, who just embrace. They do a short little dance. She's clearly whispering something in his ear. I mean, and I think she has a lot of chemistry with Bill Hader, but I think at the beginning of her tenure, it was really Sudeikis who she had chemistry with. Mm-hmm. In that moment I would pay anything to know just what he said to him in that moment. Such a sweet moment in my mind.
Absolutely, that's such a good point. Yeah, I do remember at the time when that episode was airing, it was, Sandberg and Kristen Wiig and Sudeikis were all, talked about leaving, and then obviously he stayed on. So yeah, that is a moment that stands out to me. Haynes, what about you?
Well, I'll never forget that. I mean, I'll never forget the moment with Kristen Wiig, and it wasn't overblown, not for her tenure and her contributions. Her work was so incredible, and that's definitely the most, emotionally caught up I've probably ever felt during an SNL bit. Even more than when Sandler like recently did the Farley thing. Maybe it was just because it was so long removed, but the Kristen Wiig thing. Kind of harkens back to why I love this show so much, and I'm not here for the sentimental moments. I'm in it for the comedy, but I'm in it for the realness of life and those live experiences. And that moment was so real, and it was just such an indelible cast member, and and she earned every moment of each of those little dances, and just a really special thing. You're like getting me like soft here.
Yeah, definitely special, and I want to make it clear that the audience that I don't think it's overblown. I just have seen on when they talk about Kate McKinnon, probably leaving this season. People having, I guess in hindsight, like just, I don't know, disdain for it is just, I don't know. There are definitely naysayers out there, but I and people on the panel, we're not one of them. And so finally, my last pick for my SNL top 5 meta moments. How can you not put the Five Timers Club kind of universe of sketches? I mean, so many great ones, a few not so great ones. But I always love it when they do it. I mean, that moment when Tom Hanks, whips out the card and he goes backstage and Steve Martin and Paul Simon are there. I mean, that's just like iconic SNL. And that is, something that I, something like one of like the first things that how I got like interested in the show is I remember, when I was in middle school, they aired like the SNL in the 90s like documentary special, and I wish they still did those. They haven't done them since the 90s one, but they did like a highlighting part of like the Five Timers Club, and that kind of just like opened up the SNL meta universe to me is just like the fact that at the time it was just like one sketch, but it turned into such a thing to where now it's a big deal. Whoever hosts 5 times, and the feud between Steve Martin and Alec Baldwin, who can overtake whose record. I mean, I do want to give a special shout out to the Platinum Lounge sketch, where they have Steve Martin and Alec Baldwin. I think it's like you have to have hosted 12 times was the number. But they are like trying to poison each other and everything like that. It's just it is just really funny. So I would love to hear what you guys have to say about those sketches.
Well, I'm a big baseball fan, and to me, it's always like an old timers game when they bring, Candace Bergen back, and you're like, oh my God, when was the last time she hosted? Like that's so great to see. Or Paul Simon or Martin Short being the waiter. Like it was just so fantastic.
And I'll add, it's so the 5 Timers Club is so arbitrary, yet you love it. That's the beauty of SNL. Is it's so arbitrary that it's like there's this sketch show that airs on Saturday, and yet everybody, even those who don't watch it, want to see what they have to say about what happened in the news, and you fall in love with it, and it's become this almost sports team that you follow for years. It's so arbitrary, yet you love it, and it's the same thing with the 5 Timers Club. Like, so they picked 5 times was like a measure that should be rewarded, and it's become this thing where even the fans maybe more so than the show at this point. When they notice someone's coming, hitting that 5 Timers Club mark, they're sitting there going, "Are we going to get a 5 Timer sketch?" And sometimes the show doesn't always acknowledge it, but the fans always know, even though it's such an arbitrary mark.
That's a really great point. It's almost like the SNL universe of like the EGOT, the Emmy, Grammy, Oscar, Tony. It's like when you know that they have 3 of those awards and that they're just one away, you're like, okay, when's it gonna be? Is Scarlett Johansson gonna be on the show for her 5th time now that she's dating and then later marrying Colin Jost? It's the things that the fans think about and like care about. Haynes, what do you think about the 5 Timers Club and its history with the show?
Well, I love the 5 Timers Club sketches because it gives you an excuse to bring back a handful of people that pretty much everyone loves. There's a reason that they've hosted so many times. They're well liked by the general public and usually by the SNL audience as well. So I love those sketches. I mean, any excuse to bring back a guy like Steve Martin, of course, that's amazing. And we mentioned Bergen. I love that. I think she's back there in the 5 Timers Club in the episode, maybe where I guess is Jonah Hill getting inducted, and he's like, "Well, thank you guys so much for like letting me be a part of your show," or something like they're acting like they own the place, and like Keenan's like serving drinks in the background or something. He's like, "It's my show."
that in itself is a great meta moment within the meta. Keenan has so many of those over the years. One that comes to mind is they do the Celebrity Family Feud, and I think Chris Redd is playing Jordan Peele, and he says something along the lines of like, "Oh, well, you can't do sketch comedy forever." And like Keenan breaks Steve Harvey for like a second. It's like, what now? You can't. Like, it's just like Keenan is almost like should be the number 1 spot. Like, he has so many moments. But he's well represented in the new cast member versus Arcade Fire part of my list. But that's my list of my top 5 favorite SNL meta moments. Honestly, like these lists like blew my expectations out of the water. You guys really came up with some good stuff, and hopefully
we only spent 90 minutes on one segment.
Right. I had this long laundry list of topics we were gonna cover, and the good news is that we can save it for a future episode. But to the audience and listeners out there, please, if you have your own top 5 list, put in the comments. Tweet at SNL Stats, like share your top 5, whether it's a version of the topics that we talked about this week, or your own personal top 5 list. I just think it's cool that I gave everyone the opportunity to like come up with their own list, and everyone came up with something completely different. We didn't get into a scenario where 2 people had political presidential impressions and had similar lists. That just speaks to what SNL is, and being a fan of SNL is that everyone clings on to something that they love and they want to rank and discuss. So this was awesome. Like I said, we had a bunch of different topics to talk about, but we are running short on time. Apologies to Matt Damon, we're running out of time. But I do want to go
Buckingham.
I do want to say, I think that should have been the reference, not Jimmy Kimmel. He has no history with the show. So we're gonna save some of the other segments that we had prepared for you guys, hopefully for a future episode. But I did want to get into a little game towards the end here, in the last 10 minutes or so. I came up with this game. It's not rocket science. It's a very simple concept. It's called SNL Desert Island. So I am going to give 2 choices to the panel here. You have to basically, it's almost like a Sophie's Choice. You have to pick one or the other to come with you on the SNL Desert Island. You get a best of all their sketches, but you can't watch any of the other sketches of the other person. So it's really like we're gonna see who lies where. So let me pull some of these up. So I feel like for this one, we're gonna know what most of everyone's answers are at the table based on their conversation. But the first Desert Island matchup, Phil Hartman versus Bill Hader. Andrew Haskell, I see your face. I need you. Who are you bringing to the island? You can only pick one, and the other one you'll never see his sketches ever again. Who's it going to be?
That's fun.
So we spent plenty of time on Phil Hartman today. Bill Hader to me is the quintessential. He's my favorite SNL cast member. He's the person that made me want to get into comedy. I got to go Bill Hader. I'm sorry, it's Bill Hader for me personally.
All right. Well, Andrew Haynes, what do you have to say between Phil Hartman and Bill Hader? Who you got?
So, this did turn into a Phil Hartman love fest. But there's a lot to love about SNL, and I do think of Bill Hader as probably my favorite of the last 20 years or something, kind of this side of the century mark. I think about Bill Hader so much in my life. I think about him a little bit more than Phil Hartman, and I make more references. And wow, this is. If we're writing the plot of this whole thing, we've all been so devoted to Phil Hartman this whole time, and now this tragic ending where I have to pick Bill Hader. So I think I pick Bill, but it's like I'm reaching for both my children and I can only grab one,
There's not. It's like Titanic. There's only enough room on the piece of wood off the ship for one of these cast members. Yeah. I know I had to start you guys off with a doozy. It's almost like M. Night Shyamalan directed this podcast because this has been a twist. Bill Kenney, what do you got? Phil or Bill?
That's a very, very difficult one, but I've got to come with the cast member that brung me. So I'm sticking with Phil. Can I still watch Barry?
But unfortunately, your HBO subscription is not coming with you on the island. But you can watch as much Simpsons as you want.
Okay.
Unless Bill Hader has been on an episode that I am not thinking of. I'm sure he has at some point. Well, awesome. Well, I know I started you guys off with a doozy there. Here's another one
Whoa. What's your pick, pal?
Oh, my pick. I'm asking the questions here. I mean, this one's very easy.
Okay.
Bill Hader. I mean, again, like growing up with him as like the glue of like my cast is, you know, and that's why I picked this as like a matchup. I mean, it's Bill Hader. You know, I don't even need to go into it. It's just Stefan, Vinny DiVicci, just you know, Vincent Price. I mean, you name it. I mean, just incredible stuff. All right, the next matchup I have for you folks is Kate McKinnon versus Amy Poehler. Not what you were expecting. You were expecting Kristen Wiig, but I said Amy Poehler. So let's start with Haynes. Putting you on the spot.
Amy Poehler.
Yeah.
I love Kate McKinnon. She is, you know, a freaking machine. She pumps out jokes and she puts so much into her characters, and she's such a natural performer. But I mean, Amy Poehler, I really, really, really was head over heels in love with SNL, like when Amy Poehler was crushing it. And, you know, just at the time that I was getting into SNL, I was already into sketch comedy. You know, it started with me just like reading with, you know, Mad Magazine, obviously it's not a sketch, but it got me into Mad TV, which got me into all of a sudden Comedy Central when they're playing those SNL reruns in the afternoon when I first got home from school. Before that, they played Kids in the Hall and they played Upright Citizens Brigade. So we got to see Amy Poehler when she was very young back during that. So I was a fan of hers for a long time. You know, I still like constantly have this debate in my mind all the time, like who I would rather like hang out with between Tina Fey and Amy Poehler. And I find myself coming to the conclusion that I think, because I'm such a huge 30 Rock fan, I think I like Amy. I mean, I think I like Tina's joke writing prowess just a hair more. Not her prowess, but her style is just a little bit more my style. But as far as like, but Amy Poehler blows Tina Fey out of the water, no offense, as an actress. And as a person to hang out with, I think her spirit, she just seems like so fun and it's like exploding with like chaotic and charming energy. I mean, I love Kate McKinnon, but to me, it's a no-brainer. Amy Poehler. No offense, Kate. Love you.
No offense, Kate. We love everyone, but you know, unfortunately, on Haynes Island, it's, you know, McKinnon does not have a ticket. Bill, let's hear your pick.
That's not even close for me, and I love Amy as well, but I got to go with Kate. Kate to me is the glue of this cast, and you think about you know, cast members who could fall into any time era of SNL, and she is one of those people, and as is Bill Hader and Phil Hartman, who, if you put her in 1977, she would shine alongside of Gilda. And you know, but yeah, I'd pick Kate by far. She's probably only second to me, female cast member wise, to Jan Hooks. So
yeah, well, that's you know, I understand your argument there, but I think I have to side with the Andrews on this one and go with Amy Poehler. The thing that gives oh, did you say what? Did you say Kate?
I didn't answer yet.
Oh, okay. Haskell, I feel like I'm reading your mind. What are you gonna say?
Amy Poehler, Massachusetts girl. I'm from Massachusetts myself. I love her. I can objectively say that Amy Poehler is not just one of the great female talents that ever been on SNL, one of the great talents to ever be on SNL. When you mentioned Amy Poehler, my mind goes to a few sketches of hers that have never done it for me. She had that one-legged reality show contestant who farts when she hops. Never did it for me. Bronx Beat never really did it for me. I'm blanking on the one, but the one that she did with Horatio Sands, where he played her stepdad, they didn't hit with me as much as they should. And if I'm that's what I'm watching on a desert island, then I have to flip. I got to go Kate McKinnon.
Wow. Okay. Well, I teased it a little bit there, but I'm siding with Andrew Haines, not both Andrews on this one. The thing that tips it for me is both of the pairings of Weekend Update. Amy and Tina and Amy and Seth are some of my favorite iterations of Update. And it's crazy to think that her kind of era with both of those is very short, but it was very memorable. I think she was only on with Tina for 2 years and then with Seth for 2 years. But those are just incredibly memorable for me, and not only mentioning her, awesome sketch work, the stuff she's done with UCB, and again, love Kate McKinnon, and she is definitely the glue, the Phil Hartman, if you will, of this cast. But I'm going with Amy Poehler on this one. I think we have time for one more.
Let me just defend that Bronx Beat is one of the great recurring sketches of all time. I would watch Bronx Beat any week.
Well, it's funny you say that, because when I was first on the show, I mentioned that the first episode of SNL that I think I watched live as a kid in middle school for whatever reason was the Zach Braff hosted episode with Maroon 5 back in season 32, and there's a Bronx Beat in that episode, so therefore Bronx Beat must have gotten me into the show. Therefore, your argument is correct. Right. And you get the points there. But okay, I think we have time for one more, and then unfortunately we're gonna have to wrap up. But it's been an awesome episode thus far, in my opinion. But this is the quintessential question that I feel like these two have been compared to each other for more, for so many reasons, and over the years, some say that this guy was the next iteration of this original cast member, John Belushi versus Chris Farley. Bill, since you side, that means you get to go first on this one.
Oh boy, that's tough. Is there a third choice? No.
No. John Candy.
Yeah. That is about as tight as it gets to me. I'd have to go with Belushi. We hadn't seen anything like him in comedy before. We hadn't seen anything like SNL before SNL came along, but he was such a force. And the fact that he didn't look like a leading man, he didn't do the straight joke, and he could just get away with, the twinkle in his eye looking at the camera, and that was enough. Or he could go crazy like he did on Update, or do a commercial parody like Chocolate Frosted Donuts. Like he did it all. And it might be kind of tinged because he died so early. It would be interesting to see if he took like a Chevy Chase or Aykroyd path and, went into movies more than he had already done. But yeah, I'd have to go with Belushi. Sorry, Chris.
Sorry, Chris. Well, Haskell, let's bring you in here. The quintessential question that every SNL fan has asked themselves: Belushi, not Jim, John Belushi versus Chris Farley. Yeah, Bill, you're talking about Jim Belushi, right?
Of course, of course.
It's funny. For all three of these options, I feel like I'm the person who I objectively think might be the lesser of the talent. And for a question that's so neck and neck for this one, for me, I need to go back to what I view SNL as, which is back of the classroom funny. Which of these guys is back of the classroom funny? And when I picture that SNL high school classroom, the guy who's in the back of the room making everybody laugh is Chris Farley. So I'm going to go Chris Farley.
Yeah, I can't argue with your logic on that one. But Andrew Haines, let's hear what you got.
So this is a hell of a matchup. And long before I was allowed by my parents to watch SNL or really had a chance to get into it with my friends. A movie that my dad and I always bonded over, even though neither of us were in Greek life, and perhaps that's why, because we could mock it. But Animal House was just. That was my first experience with Belushi, and just such a madman. He's clearly such a genius. I have said, and it's funny that this is what it comes down to, because I came really, really close to making my top 5 list, top 5 physical comedians on SNL, and it was going to come down to Belushi and Farley. And I'm a big physical comedy guy. Maybe that's why I like the Biden Kerry impression more than some other folks do. I love the finger guns and all that stupid stuff. I love it. And the bouncing around, even though it's not Biden-esque. I just love Jim Carrey's physical comedy. So this is a heck of a question. I have found myself saying that Chris Farley is probably my favorite cast member of all time. He put so much into his characters, and he had such a range. And, you talk about that twinkle in Belushi's eye. I think it just twinkled a little bit more in Farley's. He was just there was something so likable about this psycho nutbag. And if you asked Sammy, if I had to pick one and we had to pretend like the other didn't exist, like they disappeared from the show, then I think I would pick Belushi, because I don't know that Farley would exist without Belushi, right?
Right.
But that's not what you're asking me. You're asking, I think you just lost Alec.
Oh God! Oh no! Well, it's a good thing the show's all, for you audio listeners. I had a hanging DVD of the best of Alec Baldwin, but finish your point. I feel like you're really going somewhere with that.
For those who couldn't see, it was a perfect metaphor to the ending of the show. It's completely falling apart.
It's just off the rails.
But what you said is that we won't get to watch any of their stuff ever again, and we're stuck with one or the other. And this is so hard for me. But to me, like I said, I think Farley's maybe the greatest cast member in history, and it's not just because of the legend of like dying young. I mean, the guy just puts so much into his sketches. It's the reason I love Cecily Strong now so much. She just seems to ooze so much into every one of her characters, and there's not a person I could love more than Chris Farley. So yeah, I gotta pick Chris Farley.
Well, Farley for the win. Excellent points there, and I gotta go with Chris Farley as well. Of all of my collection of best of DVDs as a kid, I feel like Chris Farley's is one that I popped in maybe the most. It's like him and Sandler for me were the ones that I always popped in. I mean, just the way he used his physical body. Every inch of a scene, he takes control and just with, like you said, with Cecily Strong, just does anything for the joke, anything for the comedy, even if it meant destroying his own body, falling on the table in the Matt Foley sketch. Just those moments are the ones that I always remember. I mean, John Belushi, he's an OG. He's a not ready for primetime player. And we probably wouldn't have Chris Farley, like you said, if it wasn't for John Belushi. But if I have to pick one to bring on the desert island, it's got to be Chris Farley. That's just what I would do in that situation. But guys, we did it. We did the first ever SNL Superfan Takeover on the SNL Stats podcast. I underestimated how deep of a dive we were going to go into the topics tonight, because man, do we have a bunch of stuff in our back pocket for whenever John gives us the keys to the castle again. And hopefully he does. If big if. But guys, thank you so much for being my first ever guest on the show. I as someone who is new to podcasting and new to this channel, to the SNL Stats podcast, I feel like when Eddie Murphy got asked to host the show when he was still a cast member, in a sense, like.
No, you're Eddie Murphy all of a sudden.
I'm not. No. I'm just. It's an analogy. We don't have to say it. We don't have to say I'm Eddie Murphy, greatest of all time, or whatever. But seriously, from the bottom of my heart, thank you guys so much. Let's start with Bill. Do you have anything to plug?
Just follow me on Twitter at BKLove73.
Awesome. And Andrew Haines, again, thank you very much for joining us tonight. Please, if you have anything to plug, do it.
Well, thank you. You did a great job hosting. So thanks for taking the reins tonight. You can follow me at SNL Has a Cast. I'm always making the arguments, for the most part, that we should emphasize cast members more, power to the people, and follow this show and follow these guys, Bill and Haskell and Sammy. Good content we created today, guys. Glad to be here.
Definitely, I would say top tier content. And Haskell, where can the listeners find you?
You can find me at Andrew Haskell. You can see some of my stand-up comedy, some of the sketches that I put together, a lot of SNL inspired stuff. I just want to say real quick, Thanksgiving week, I know it's been a tough year for a lot of people, so I wish the absolute best to you guys for your Thanksgiving. I hope if you don't get to be with your loved ones, you get to see your loved ones. And for anybody out there who's struggling this holiday season, if you're looking for a laugh, Wednesday night, NBC, the SNL Thanksgiving clip show. It's always a tradition in my house. So I hope you guys sit down and watch that and laugh.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Cheers to that. That's a great point. And definitely join us on the subreddit, the Live from New York subreddit that Haskell moderates. It's an awesome community for people who love the show like us. And then just to plug myself. That sounds weird. That Sammy. I've been your host. That's Sammy Kay on Twitter. I make dumb jokes and talk about the show when it's on SNL. We don't know exactly when the show is coming back. We have some unconfirmed sources telling us that there will be 3 shows, hopefully in December. So fingers crossed that happens. So next week, John will probably be back, unless I don't give him the show back. But no, John will be back. He's not sure exactly what they'll be doing, but I'm sure it's going to be an interesting conversation and discussion of all of our favorite show, Saturday Night Live. So please, if you have any feedback that you can give to myself or John about what you liked, what you didn't like about the show, if you want to see more of these Superfan episodes, I certainly do. I'm sure everyone on the panel does. Please let us know, what you'd like to see for next time. Please post in the comments on YouTube and on any podcast service, your personal top 5, your SNL Desert Island choices, anything of the sort. And other than that, please follow at SNL Stats on YouTube and on Twitter. And thanks for joining us for another edition of the SNL Stats Pod. I hope everyone has a nice week. Thanks, everybody. Happy Thanksgiving.